3 years ago, and every once in a while you sort of feel the presence, but I don't know whether that's just because you want.
They told him he was too old 40 years ago now. At 94, Clint Eastwood is still making movies while dating a woman half his age. His crazy morning routine starts at 5 a.m. with a workout that would kill most 30-year-olds. He flies his own helicopter, he hates birthday parties, and he just bought another multi-million-dollar property because it looked nice. Hollywood's toughest cowboy isn't just surviving at 94, he's living a life so wild even his own kids can't believe it. "Oh my gosh, I don't want to break your neck 'cause I'm heavy." "Well, I better." "You're not that heavy really, and you can come to my office anytime." Clint Eastwood wasn't supposed to be a legend. In fact, everything about his early life pointed the other way. He wasn't born into poverty like people think. He came into the world on May 31, 1930, weighing over 11 pounds, so big that nurses called him Samson. His family lived well in a wealthy neighborhood in Piedmont, California. They had 2 cars, a swimming pool, and a country club membership. His mom could trace their family line all the way back to the Mayflower. But even with all that privilege, Clint didn't have an easy path, and much of the rugged blue-collar persona he later built wasn't exactly true. It was part of the image he created to survive in Hollywood. As a kid, school was a struggle. He failed junior high and had to repeat a grade at Oakland Technical High. Teachers saw something special in him, especially on stage, but Clint ignored their advice. He was too caught up in chasing cars and girls. His school record showed more interest in fixing engines than doing homework. Some of his friends even thought he never officially graduated. But there was one thing that hinted at the artist inside him: he could play the piano like a pro. He practiced until his fingers hurt, learning complicated pieces that most teens wouldn't bother with. That same focus would one day help him write film scores for his own movies. After high school, Clint didn't jump into acting. He took on some pretty wild jobs. At one point, he was taming wild logs in Oregon, a job where one wrong move could kill you. Then he got drafted into the Army, stationed at Fort Ord. He made extra cash as a lifeguard and a bouncer. One night he even broke up a knife fight. But the real turning point came in 1951. He was in a Navy aircraft that went down near Point Reyes. The crash wasn't the end. He had to swim more than 2 miles through freezing water filled with sharks. He later called it stark terror. That experience stuck with him. Years later, when he starred in Escape from Alcatraz, he drew on that exact moment to make the cold water escape scene feel real. His acting career didn't exactly start with a bang. In 1955 he landed a tiny role in Revenge of the Creature, a low-budget monster movie. He played a nervous lab tech named Jennings whose big moment involved losing a rat. The director hated the scene and wasn't shy about showing it. Clint only had 28 lines and it took 15 takes to get it right. He was paid $75 a week and Universal nearly cut the scene entirely. Nobody on set had any clue that this awkward guy fumbling with a lab coat would go on to become one of the biggest stars in film history. No matter how well-intentioned they might be, no matter what their illusions might be, I have my veto pen drawn and ready for any tax increase that Congress might even think of sending up, and I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers: go ahead, make my day. In the mid-1950s, Universal Pictures ended his contract after just 18 months. They thought he wasn't good enough for the screen. The reasons were almost laughable: his Adam's apple was too big, his speech too slow, and he had a chipped tooth he wouldn't fix. Around the same time, Burt Reynolds was also let go. As they stood in the Universal parking lot, Reynolds joked, "You're really screwed because I can learn to act, you can't lose that Adam's apple." Years later, Eastwood would return to that same studio, but this time as a superstar with $1 million paycheck. The same place that tossed him aside now had to welcome him back as a leading man. Then came the moment that changed everything. One day, while talking to a story editor at NBC, Clint was spotted by CBS executive Robert Sparks in the studio cafeteria. Sparks noticed how tall and striking he looked. That quick glance led to a meeting, then a screen test, and eventually a lead role in the Western series Rawhide. It was pure chance, being in the right place, looking the right way, at the right moment. Suddenly, the man who'd been rejected for his looks and laid-back attitude was being celebrated for those exact same things. His face was in TV Guide, and producers were calling him a rising star. The same slow speech and rugged style that got him fired were now pulling in millions of viewers every week. But Eastwood didn't even like the character. He thought Rowdy was too immature, but he went along with it. What started as a backup gig turned him into a national name almost overnight. Within 3 weeks of airing, the show cracked the top 20 in TV ratings. But behind the scenes, it was exhausting, 6 days a week, long hours, boiling Arizona heat. His pay went from $750 per episode to a staggering $119,000 per episode. When the show ended, still some people thought he was lazy. Directors would plan their day around him being late. One even said he never put Clint in the first scene because he was guaranteed to show up at least half an hour late. By the 6th year of Rawhide, Eastwood had had enough. He was bored and desperate to try something new. That's when a strange opportunity came his way from an unknown Italian director making a low-budget Western in Spain. The director, Sergio Leone, was using a fake American name, Bob Robertson, because no one in the United States took Italian Westerns seriously. Eastwood wasn't even Leone's first choice. He had tried to get bigger names like Henry Fonda or James Coburn, but none of them fit the budget. Eventually, Clint agreed to do it. He figured it was such a small film that nobody in America would even notice if it failed. He took the chance and flew to Spain even though he didn't speak Italian and Leon didn't speak English. They used hand gestures, translators, and a lot of guessing to make it work. That movie, A Fistful of Dollars, turned Clint Eastwood into an international star, but it wasn't just his acting that stood out. Eastwood created the whole look of his character himself. The outfit wasn't designed by a big studio wardrobe team, he pieced it together from his own stuff. He bought a pair of black Levi's, bleached and roughed them up, reused boots and belts from Rawhide, and picked up a hat from a second-hand store. Even the small cigars and poncho came from random shops he found along the way. The whole vibe of the man with no name was built on purpose. Eastwood wanted him to say very little and let his body language do the talking. That silence made the character seem more powerful and mysterious. And even though his name changed from movie to movie, Joe, Mango, Blondie, audiences just saw him as the same silent gunslinger. The studio marketed them as a trilogy, and the image stuck. When these films finally hit the United States, critics hated them. They were loud about it too. Some called the first one cheap jack, another said the second was dopey, and one New York Times review slammed The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly as a repellent disaster. Time magazine took shots at Eastwood's acting, saying he looked like a piece of wood. But the audience had the final word. The trilogy earned over $84 million worldwide on a budget that barely cracked $2 million. One movie alone, The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, brought in almost $39 million and more than 44 million ticket sales. These so-called spaghetti westerns took off and inspired a whole wave of similar movies. Critics eventually came around, but not before Eastwood had already changed the game. Clint Eastwood didn't just become a Hollywood legend, he took that status by force and never let go. His journey to superstardom took a major leap in 1971 when he stepped into the role of Detective Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry. But believe it or not, that role was never meant for him. It was first offered to Frank Sinatra, who worked on it for months before quitting. Paul Newman passed because he didn't like the politics. But Newman didn't just turn it down, he passed the script directly to Eastwood, saying it might be a good fit. Others bailed too. John Wayne didn't want Sinatra's Leftovers, Robert Mitchum thought it was garbage, and Steve McQueen said no because he'd already played a cop in Bullet. One by one, Hollywood's biggest stars stepped back, and Eastwood stepped forward. He took the risk, brought in his own production company, and hired his own director. That film didn't just hit, it exploded. Then Eastwood did something no one expected. In 1978 he signed on for Every Which Way But Loose, a comedy about a street-fighting trucker and his pet orangutan named Clyde. Everyone thought it would wreck his career. This was the tough guy from Dirty Harry, and now he was babysitting a monkey. But Eastwood didn't care. He believed in it. The movie was slammed by critics, but audiences loved it. It made over $100 million and became his biggest hit. Even more shocking, the sequel pulled in another $70 million. Together they made nearly $1 billion by today's standards. But behind the laughs was a dark twist. Clyde the orangutan was allegedly beaten to death by his trainer after stealing donuts on set, a sickening end to one of Hollywood's weirdest success stories. That kind of risk-taking wasn't new for Eastwood. In 1975 he was filming The Eiger Sanction, a movie that involved deadly mountain climbing. While shooting on the Eiger Mountain's north face, a climber on the crew was killed by falling rocks. Eastwood, who was both the star and director, nearly shut down the film. But instead, he made a decision that stunned everyone: he'd do all the dangerous stunts himself. He climbed cliffs, hung from ledges, and filmed without the kind of safety gear we'd expect today. At 44 years old, he risked his life for the movie. And it wasn't even his first brush with death. Years earlier, he'd survived a plane crash into shark-infested waters during his army days. He later said if he'd known about the sharks, he probably would have died from fear alone. Eastwood's confidence in himself also kept him from chasing the wrong roles. He was offered Superman in the late 70s, yes, that's Superman, but turned it down flat. "That's not for me," he said. Same with James Bond. Had he accepted, he would have been the first American to play 007. But he knew better. He understood his brand. Eastwood wasn't the guy in tights or tuxedos. He was the guy with a squint and a gun. By the end of the decade, Clint Eastwood wasn't just a leading man. He was a force behind the camera too. With his own production company, the Malpaso Company, he had full say over his movies. He wasn't just choosing his roles, he was shaping them from the ground up. If the script didn't feel right, he changed it. If the studio hesitated, he pushed harder. Even when people laughed at him for starring in a comedy with a monkey, he made it work, and made a fortune. Clint Eastwood had been acting for years, but by 1971 he was done playing by other people's rules. He wanted to direct, to take full control of what happened in front of and behind the camera. So when Play Misty for Me became his directorial debut, he went all in. No backup plan. No second guessing. Most first-time directors go over budget, run late, and get chewed up by studio politics. Eastwood did the opposite. He shot the entire movie in his hometown, Carmel by the Sea, using real locations like a local radio station and restaurant instead of fancy sets. He finished the movie early and under budget by $50,000. Even the music was done on his terms. He personally got the rights to Roberta Flack's The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face for just $2,000, and it ended up becoming a hit. The film made over $10 million and launched Eastwood's directing career with a bang. But that wasn't just luck. It was strategy. Back in 1967, Eastwood was already thinking long-term. Tired of the rigid Hollywood system, he and his advisor set up Malpaso Productions. It was more than just a company, it was a message. Malpaso means bad step, a nod to the agent who warned Eastwood that doing spaghetti westerns would ruin him. Instead, those same westerns helped him earn enough money to buy hundreds of acres near Malpaso Creek and build a creative empire. By the time he made Hang 'Em High, his first film under Malpaso, he wasn't just starring in the movie, he was producing it. And when it smashed opening weekend records in 1968, Clint Eastwood was no longer the TV guy from Rawhide. He was a real force. What really set Eastwood apart, though, was how he worked on set. While other directors spent days perfecting one scene, Eastwood became known for getting it in 1 or 2 takes. No yelling. No chaos. Just quiet focus. He believed the first take often felt the most real, the most alive. Actors quickly learned that if you didn't show up ready, you might not get another chance. Jeff Daniels once said, "You have to be ready because it's one take." Matt Damon? He had to beg for a second one, but it worked. This method helped Eastwood guide actors like Hilary Swank and Gene Hackman to Oscar-winning performances. Clint Eastwood was already a Hollywood legend by the early 90s. But what came next would push him into a whole new league. It started with a Western script called The Cut Killings, not exactly something studios were eager to pick up. Even Francis Ford Coppola gave it a shot in the 80s and still couldn't get it made. But Eastwood saw something in it. He bought the rights and then just waited, for years. He wanted to grow into the role. Literally. When he finally shot it as Unforgiven at the age of 62, the timing couldn't have been better. The film exploded, earning $159 million on a small budget and winning big at the Oscars. It wasn't just another movie, it was a final stamp of respect. And Eastwood made sure to honor his old mentors, Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, in the credits. The gunslinger had officially become a filmmaker. Just over a decade later, he took another gamble. Million Dollar Baby was the kind of film that made studios nervous. It dealt with assisted suicide, dark subject, big risk. Eastwood still went ahead. Warner Brothers barely gave it a proper release at first, probably expecting it to flop, but the film broke through, earning over $216 million. It swept the Oscars, and suddenly Eastwood wasn't just a respected director, he was unstoppable. It proved he could take heavy, uncomfortable themes and still move audiences. That's when people stopped questioning his instincts. The year before that, he had already shaken the industry with Mystic River. That movie felt like a slow burn with a punch to the gut, childhood trauma, broken lives, a murder mystery that felt too real. Eastwood kept everything quiet and focused, no flashy camera work, just raw emotion and a cast that went all in. Sean Penn and Tim Robbins walked away with Oscars, and critics could finally say out loud what they were already thinking: Eastwood had turned into one of the most emotionally precise directors around. Then came Gran Torino. No one expected a nearly 80-year-old Eastwood to deliver one of the biggest hits of his career, but he did. The story of a grumpy racist war vet who softens just enough to protect the neighbors he once hated somehow hit the perfect emotional nerve. The character was tough, bitter, and oddly familiar, almost like a weathered version of every role Eastwood had played before, and audiences loved it. The movie made $270 million and still holds a special place among his late career highlights. Even critics pointed out how his presence alone carried the film, like a ghost of Dirty Harry just under the surface. Behind all of these successes was a method unlike any other. Eastwood didn't shout action on set. He didn't do endless rehearsals. He didn't believe in second chances, one take, maybe two, that was it. He spoke softly, he trusted his actors, and most of the time it worked. Tom Hanks once joked that Eastwood treated his actors like horses because back in the day, shouting on a Western set could spook them. That quiet control, though, became his signature. Sets were calm, pressure was high, but the results spoke for themselves. Clint Eastwood's life has always been under the spotlight, but there were parts he kept deeply hidden, secrets that even he didn't know existed. For most of her life, Laurie Murray had no idea who her real father was. Adopted and raised in Seattle, she grew up far from the Hollywood world, never suspecting that her biological dad was one of the most famous men in America. Clint Eastwood didn't know either. The woman he'd briefly dated in the 50s never told him she was pregnant. Decades later, Laurie went searching for her roots and found a truth no one saw coming. When she reached out, Clint, then in his 60s, welcomed her with quiet warmth. It wasn't a scandal, it became a bond. They connected over golf, spent holidays together, and slowly she became part of the Eastwood family. But the world didn't find out until 2018, when she proudly introduced herself as Laurie Eastwood at the premiere of The Mule. Just like that, a 64-year-old secret stepped into the light. But secrets weren't unusual in Clint's world. Back in 1959, while married to Maggie Johnson, he began a passionate affair with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. It wasn't just a fling, it lasted 14 years. Everyone on set knew. They didn't hide it. Their relationship brought them a daughter, Kimber, but Eastwood kept that out of the public eye too. Roxanne was more than just a mistress, she was someone who deeply cared for him, stuck around even after the romance faded. They stayed close. When she passed away in 2023, Eastwood was hit hard. She had been part of his life for over 6 decades. Then came Sondra Locke. Their story began like a Hollywood romance but ended like a courtroom drama. They lived together for 14 years, during which Clint was still technically married. When she returned home in 1989 to find the locks changed, everything fell apart. She sued. He offered a studio deal instead. She found out he had secretly paid for it just to get her to back down. She sued again, this time for fraud. The courtroom saw a different Clint, angry, defensive, and visibly bitter. The case ended with a quiet settlement, but the damage was loud and permanent. That once powerful couple never spoke again. As all of this was unfolding, Clint had already started another hidden chapter. In the early 80s, while still with Locke, he met flight attendant Jaseline Reeves. She became the mother of 2 more of his children, Scott and Catherine. Their birth certificates read father declined. It wasn't until a tabloid dug up the truth in 1990 that the public found out. Sandra Locke reportedly had no clue either. Jaseline kept things quiet, never took him to court, never stirred the waters. But as the kids grew older, family tension started spilling into the open. Catherine's online rants and threats of legal action in 2024 showed just how fragile things remained, even decades later. In his later years, Clint found something steadier. Her name was Christina Sandera. She wasn't a star or a model. She worked as a hostess at his hotel in Carmel when they met in 2014. She stayed out of the spotlight, never chasing attention. They lived quietly, supported each other, and appeared together only on rare occasions. She focused on animal welfare and the environment while running an equestrian center. To those close to them, she was the real deal, grounded, private, and fully accepted by the Eastwood clan. Her sudden death in 2024 from heart issues broke Clint in a quiet, aching way. His statement was short, but those close to him saw the impact. And now, at 94, the man once known for playing icy loners has softened in ways no one expected. As a father, he was strict, distant, unyielding. But as a grandfather, he's something else entirely. His daughter Francesca describes him as warm, playful, and completely wrapped around the fingers of his grandkids. He shows up to their games. He laughs more. He calls himself ridiculous standing among younger parents, but he doesn't care. He's earned the right to be sentimental. Watching his family grow, messy, blended, imperfect, seems to have brought him a sense of peace that eluded him for most of his life. At 94, most people are slowing down, reflecting on their past, maybe sitting in the sun or enjoying long naps. Not Clint Eastwood. He just finished directing another film, Juror No. 2, and it's not some quiet, nostalgic farewell. It's a sharp, haunting thriller that asks one terrifying question: what if you were the one who accidentally caused the very crime you're now serving on a jury to judge? That's the nightmare Nicholas Holt's character faces in the movie, and Clint somehow still knows exactly how to make that tension feel real. He shot the film fast, clean, and with zero fluff, just the way he's always done it. Even at 94, his direction is tight, his instincts deadly accurate, and his style as minimalist as ever. There's no shaky hand, no sentimental slowdown, just pure Clint. People assumed this would be his final project, of course they did, but before the film even finished making headlines, rumors started swirling. He's already locked in the cast for his next one. While the industry thought he'd ride off into the sunset with this last film, Clint's quietly planning another. He doesn't talk about retiring. He doesn't talk about age. He just keeps working. That's it. In late 2024, a surprising controversy shook the entertainment world. A YouTube interview featuring Clint Eastwood talking about his film Juror No. 2 suddenly vanished from the platform. There was no warning, no copyright claim, and no official reason given. The host, known as Magnus, said the video just disappeared. That set off a wave of speculation online. Many believed Warner Brothers was behind the removal, especially because Eastwood had made bold comments about political correctness and the Hashmeto movement during the interview. Fans were quick to point out how strange the timing was. The interview vanished just as the film hit select theaters. Some thought the studio might be trying to keep the spotlight off the movie, worried that Eastwood's outspoken views would spark backlash. The situation quickly turned into a bigger debate about free speech in Hollywood. Argued that someone with his legacy over 90 years old and still working should be able to speak his mind without a studio stepping in. Others believed there might have been legal or contract-related reasons that weren't made public. At the heart of it all was Clint Eastwood himself, a man who continues to work at 94 and refuses to slow down. According to his daughter, Allison Eastwood, he doesn't like celebrating his birthday, he doesn't even want people to bring it up. She once said that he just wants to work and enjoy life and that trying to throw him a party never works. He shuts it down every time. That attitude says a lot about who he is. Eastwood has always focused more on the work than the attention that comes with it. He's never been one to chase awards or soak in the spotlight. Even now, when most people his age are long retired, he keeps pushing forward. Allison, who acted alongside him in a few films, says the biggest lesson he taught her was not to take life too seriously. That mindset explains everything, from his quiet refusal to celebrate birthdays to the way he still tackles film projects with the energy of someone half his age. Clint Eastwood's remarkable life and career have been defined by his unwavering determination, resilience, and a commitment to pursuing his craft on his own terms. From humble beginnings to becoming one of the most iconic figures in Hollywood, Eastwood's journey has been anything but conventional. He was never expected to achieve legendary status, yet his trajectory proved that sometimes, the most unlikely candidates are the ones who defy expectations. Despite his early struggles with school and his initial rejection from major studios, Eastwood carved out a path for himself in the entertainment industry that would transform him into a global superstar. What stands out most about Clint Eastwood is his ability to reinvent himself time and again. Initially dismissed for his looks and slow speech, Eastwood's rugged persona and distinctive style ultimately became his trademarks. It wasn't just his acting that made him a star, it was his ability to create memorable characters and bring them to life in ways that audiences could relate to. His role as the quiet, strong, and morally complex anti-hero in the spaghetti westerns of the 1960s solidified his place in cinematic history. However, Eastwood didn't rest on his laurels. Rather than allowing his fame to limit him, he pushed forward, taking on roles that challenged perceptions of him, such as his performance in the gritty Dirty Harry series. As Eastwood transitioned into directing, his approach was one of meticulous control and discipline. From his very first film, Play Misty for Me, he established himself as a director with a clear vision. He avoided the typical Hollywood pitfalls of overspending and excessive reshoots, preferring instead a focused, minimalist style that produced results quickly and efficiently. This method, which would later define his career as both a director and a producer, earned him a reputation for delivering compelling stories with a raw, unvarnished authenticity. Eastwood's ability to guide actors to performances that earned them critical acclaim, such as with $1 Million Baby and Mystic River, solidified his place as one of the most respected directors in Hollywood. Throughout his career, Eastwood's willingness to take risks both in front of and behind the camera paid off. He constantly challenged the status quo, whether it was in his controversial decision to star in the comedy Every Which Way But Loose or his choice to direct intense dramas dealing with difficult subjects. By the 1990s and into the 2000s, he had transformed from a reliable leading man into a director who could tackle a wide range of genres, from action to emotional drama. His films like Unforgiven and Gran Torino weren't just successful, they were significant cultural milestones that showcased Eastwood's evolution as a filmmaker and as a person. In his personal life, Eastwood has often been as enigmatic and complex as the characters he portrayed. His relationships have been varied and at times controversial, yet his dedication to family, albeit distant, is evident. The revelations in his later years, such as the discovery of his daughter Laurie and the challenges surrounding his romantic entanglements, demonstrate the complexity of his personal journey. These hidden chapters of his life reveal a man who, despite his public image, has experienced the ups and downs of personal and familial dynamics with quiet resilience. Even at 94, Clint Eastwood remains a force to be reckoned with in the entertainment industry. His refusal to retire or slow down is a testament to his passion for filmmaking and his desire to continue creating art. His latest project, Juror No. 2, defies expectations, proving that Eastwood's sharp instincts and minimalist style are as strong as ever. His focus on the craft, rather than the accolades or fame that come with it, has always set him apart from other Hollywood legends. Clint Eastwood's legacy is not just that of an actor or director, but of a man who has continuously reinvented himself and thrived in the face of challenges. His enduring success, despite his age, is a testament to his unwavering dedication to his art and his refusal to let anything, including time, slow him down.